Well, hello, thank you for joining me today again on the Church History Trail. You're very welcome to the programme. And where we are is we're in St Stephen's Green here in Dublin. And we're down at the pond. Beautiful, isn't it? But where I'm going to take you now is to the Huguenot graveyard, which is actually not too far from here. And I done a video on Matthew Fontaine Murray, and that was in Mount Jerome Cemetery. So this is part 2 of that, and I'm actually going to take you to the grave here, the Huguenot grave, and the Fontaine name is actually, the family's mentioned here. And of course, you called Matthew Fontaine Murray because he's of Huguenot ancestry. So I'm going to take you there now. So Matthew Fontaine Murray was nicknamed Pathfinder of the Seas, and he's considered a founder of modern oceanography. Now there's a monument that was put up to Matthew in Virginia, and actually on the monument it says Pathfinder of the Seas. Now, his book, The Physical Geography of the Sea, 1855, was the first comprehensive work on oceanography to be published. And Murray's uniform system of recording oceanographic data was adopted by navies and merchant marines worldwide, and was used to develop charts for all major sea and trade routes. Now, believe it or believe it not, but Murray's work was inspired through the reading of the Bible, actually through the reading of Psalm 8 and verse 8, because Murray came across this verse: "And the fish of the sea, and whatsoever passes through the paths of the seas." And so Murray thought to himself, well, if the Bible talks about paths in the sea, then I'm going to find them. And so he done experiments, and he was able to chart the warm and the cold currents, and this greatly aided shipping of the day, because it meant they knew which currents to avoid and which sea routes to avoid, because some of the ships, of course, were getting destroyed. So fantastic that he gleaned this from the Word of God, the Bible. And in 1847 he published Wind and Current Chart of the North Atlantic. Now, when Virginia declared secession from the Union in April 1861, Murray, who was staunchly opposed to secession, nevertheless he resigned his commission in the US Navy, and he joined the Confederate Navy with the outbreak of the American Civil War. Of course, the Civil War lasted from 1861 to 1865, and so Murray became the commander of the Confederate States Navy. He travelled to England, Ireland and France, acquiring ships and supplies for the Confederacy. And Murray was on his way back from the West Indies when he learnt of the collapse of the Confederacy. And so Murray himself had been born in 1806 in Spotsylvania County, Virginia, near Fredericksburg, where, of course, the war had brought ruin to Fredericksburg, where Murray's immediate family lived. And so, on the advice of General Robert E. Lee, he decided not to return to Virginia. And of course, he surrendered to the US Navy. Now, he died on the 1st of February 1873 at Lexington in Virginia. But his grandfather was James Murray, and James was born in 1718 in Dublin, and he was of French Huguenot ancestry. So James came to the Virginia colony as an infant with his parents, and of course hundreds of Huguenot refugees had settled there, and James was ordained into the ministry in 1742, where he served for a year in King William County. So James's father was the Huguenot Matthew Maury, who had married James's mother, Mary Anne Fontaine, on the 20th of October 1716. So there's where Maury gets the name of Fontaine, Mary Fontaine Maury. So we're just going to get across this road here if we can. So both the Maury and Fontaine families were Huguenot families who had actually fled. I'll have to hit this slide. Who had actually fled France because of the persecution since the revocation of the Edict of Nantes on the 18th of October 1685. So Matthew had come from France in 1714 to Dublin, and around 1714 he came to Dublin, and he lived in Dublin for 2 years where he worked as a merchant. And in February 1717 Matthew sailed for Virginia with a shipment of trade goods.
So I think that's the...
So he arrived in Virginia in March 1718, and he joined his two brothers-in-law, John and James Fontaine. And Matthew settled on a portion of land which his brother-in-law, John Fontaine, had purchased near West Point, Virginia. Now, Matthew made preparations for a small house, and then he returned to Dublin for his wife, Mary Anne. So they called their new home Hickory Hill. Matthew, of course, engaged in business there, and he also served as Justice of King William County, and that was from 1732 to 1744. He was also sheriff in 1739, and Matthew Maury died in 1752 in King William County, Virginia, and his wife Mary Anne Fontaine, that is of course her maiden name, died on the 10th of December 1755. And this is the graveyard here. Thank you, absolutely fantastic. But not only that, but the Fontaine family name is actually mentioned here, which I will show you shortly. Isn't this fantastic? Now, I have covered this before, but obviously I didn't know this information when I did. So this is part 2 of, if you want the full story, then watch part 1, because I go into the colleges in Virginia that was named, the hall that was named after Maury, etc. You can't get in here, unfortunately. But this is where the Huguenot plot is, near St Stephen's Green. And of course a big connection with Matthew Fontaine Maury and the Huguenot family, Fontaines, who are buried here. So I'm going to show you their name. Which is on this board here. So it says, Huguenot Cemetery, non-conformist Huguenot congregations. Among those interred here were members of the following families. And in the third row there, where you see the D ending at the top and then the F starting, and if you go down, you will see Fontaine, if you can see that. So it's 2 from before you hit the surnames beginning with G. You have the one above the name with the G, starting with the G, and then you've got the Fontaine, if you can see that. I think actually both of them might be. No, it's not that. It's the one, the second above where they start with the G. If you can see that, you can see Fontaine there clearly. So the Fontaine family is married here, and of course Matthew's mother was called Fontaine, his father was Maury, and that's why he was called Matthew Fontaine Maury. And of course both the Fontaine and Maury families were Huguenots. So isn't that amazing? So thanks for watching, and God bless.